I first met John Caroll, gosh, what was it, about 15, 20 years ago. He was, working as a consultant, still is. He's an entrepreneur, he runs his own consulting business, he's a corporate coach, a corporate consultant. I met him and enjoyed our conversations, totally secular. We didn't talk about faith at all, but I learned about a group that he helped facilitate, associated with Christ our King. And it is a group that meets every Wednesday in person. Through COVID, being a very entrepreneurial, he kind of put us all online and kind of kept the process going. But I saw John through a different lens, not as a corporate consultant, not as an entrepreneur, but as a faithful, beautiful witness to Christ. And the way he lives his life, not only as a father and as a grandfather, but as a witness. And that is what our faith is about. It's about witness. The first apostles were witnesses themselves with their own eyes to Christ. And that witness has been passed down from generation to generation. And it's people like John who can speak up and humbly, quietly, but persistently remind people of what it means to be a witness of Christ, what it means to be a faithful follower of Christ. It is so inspirational, I think, to me and many, many other people. So I'd like to take this opportunity to just invite you to give John a round of applause for all he's done for our
Goodness sakes, after an introduction like that, no pressure. So good to be here. I need to get a little more from this Pittsburgh guy. What part of town in Pittsburgh?
Mount Lebanon, Southfield.
Mount Lebanon. I did a lot of my growing up next door in Bethel Park.
Oh.
So the world gets smaller by the day.
I trained in McKeesport.
In McKeesport.
Played
Nice.
volleyball at Pitt.
Nice. We've got some
Got a lot of
Yinzers in the
Pittsburgh.
room. I love it.
Sure.
I love it. I love it. As I prepared for our time here today, I took very seriously the value of your time. And so, if you will bear with me, I'd like to open with a prayer that I've written out, and if you would bow your heads, please. Let's pray. Lord and God of all glory, honor, and praise to you, sovereign Lord, creator of the universe and author of all that is good. I pray your Holy Spirit to be with us in this time we have together, that those assembled might understand what you have for each of us individually and corporately. I raise up to you all who are struggling in any way, especially those looking to you for restoration to full and vibrant health and energy. And I make all these prayers in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. In October of 22, I was heading out of where I was living at the time, and my left foot wouldn't fit into my left shoe. And I didn't know what that was about, but I knew it wasn't healthy or good. So I got my foot in my shoe, went and did what I needed to do, and the very next day, I started on what I'm now referring to as my healing journey, and learned that while it wasn't central to what I was about to discover, it was certainly an outgrowth of that, and it became part of the story that you're about to hear. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time, and I welcome questions. You don't need to wait till the end. If you have a question, bring them. We can also do question and answer at the end as well. So those are my sort of simple housekeeping things. The next day, I went, and I am a patient in the Roper St. Francis healthcare system. Patient is a bit of a misnomer where I'm concerned, because I'm not terribly patient in times of when I think I need, a little bit of help. And that's not the demanding kind so much as the person who just do what, you say you're going to do. And we had a few opportunities and instances. And be aware, I serve on a patient family experience council at Roper St. Francis. So I had somebody to speak with when all of these things were going on, and they were very supportive and taking things to heart. At any rate, the leg turned out to be nothing that anybody could immediately associate with what I was about to learn, but it did get me a faster appointment with a family doctor, with a GP, which I didn't have for a series of circumstances which aren't relevant to this situation. So 2 weeks later to the day, I met my new family doctor, Dr. Patricia Smith, and she said, "So what's going on? What brings you in today?" And I said, "My left leg and foot are swollen. I have trouble getting my foot in my shoe. What's going on?" And she, actually, that was the next day with somebody who was what do you call the physician assistant, who said, "Ooh, that leg is not something to mess with." That person, who was in the Roper system, sent me to the vascular center west of the Ashland. They couldn't find anything; everything was negative. And I said to the tech, "Do I have to wait for somebody to give me the full report on this?" And she said, "Well, I can't tell you what we have in terms of the results of the testing. What I can tell you is I'm not leaving you go if there's an issue, and you can go now." And so I left and got the full story a little bit later, that there was nothing, there were no clots flying around, and nothing that they were really concerned about happening in that way. Fast forward to the 27th of October. Based on that, I got in to see Dr. Smith. We talked about anything and everything, and I also was able to tell her that with men who are my age and maybe a little bit younger and certainly older, that there were things going on in the bathroom through the night and otherwise that might be expected age-wise, but she thought they were a concern as well. So she referred me to a urologist who brought me in, took a look, did some things, checked some things, and finally asked for a biopsy. For those who haven't had a biopsy for your prostate, guys, if you can do anything other than that, I would strongly recommend it. If that's the only thing they can do, I would tell you to insist on whatever it is they will give you in order to numb or annihilate the discomfort that comes with that, which I wasn't able to get. So anyway, all of that said, the next time I saw my urologist, he, and this was the first time I could say my urologist. So the first time I saw my urologist, he said, we're going to get some more information. We're going to do full body bone scan. We're going to do CT scans for the cavities, chest, abdomen, and pelvis. But he said, "I think they're pretty much a formality. John, you've got what we would call advanced metastatic prostate cancer." And so after the scans, he confirmed what he had already suspected. The report on the full body bone scan had cancer involved from the calvarium, that was a new term for me, all the way to the femur. And the only reason they didn't go knee down is because the radiologist who's reading the pictures can't tell the difference between age-related degeneration in a limb versus cancer having involved that place. But in the meantime, from here to here, all the bones had cancer involved. For those who are savvy on these things, prostate cancer doesn't have a stage assigned to it. You've probably heard stage 1 through 4. Prostate cancer has a Gleason score, and it's a combination of two numbers that range 0 to 5. I rang the bell and got a Gleason score of 10. If you were to equate that to the stages, that's a full-on stage 4, but it was prostate cancer, so it was a Johnson scale of 10. And so I was in short order about to be introduced to the doctor who would become my oncologist, and within 8 days I saw him for the first time. The urologist told me what to expect, started me on some medication, and I went to see the oncologist for the very first time. The oncologist said, okay, I see what's going on. I've read the reports on the scans. Fortunately, by the way, I had no organ involvement other than the lymph nodes in the pelvic region. That's where it goes first, the urologist explained to me. The bones in the pelvic region, but then it has a chance to spread. The key measure beyond those scans is something called the PSA, prostate antigen.
Specific antigen.
Specific antigen, thanks Doc. And so that number in a male is ideally 4.0 or less. I went separate from the healthcare professionals that I've just mentioned to you a week before I met my new general practitioner, and I went specifically because somebody said, hey, you're probably in the age range where it would be good for you to get some hormone testing with your blood. And I did. And my PSA came back. Remember I said 4.0 or less? My PSA reading came back, the very first one, at 1208. So I had rung the bell and then some. The urologist thought there might be a little bit of margin of error, so 2 weeks after I got that reading, they drew blood at the urologist's office and put that through the analysis. And in 2 weeks, it had gone from 1208 to 1409. I was going the wrong way fast. And so then I got to meet the oncologist for the first time. And the oncologist made it clear, well, you know, we're probably going to be doing, it's a three-pronged thing. It's 2 medicines that you can take, one with a hypodermic, one that you take orally, and then the chemotherapy. But we're going to hold off on the chemotherapy. I think he called it watchful waiting. And we're not going to start that till after the holidays. And I think he was being very humane, very sincerely humane, that he didn't want me going through that kind of stuff, the side effects of chemotherapy before and during and through the holidays. So I took that message to be go. Don't wait, go. Do everything that you can do to find ways to address this condition that I fully expected. I need to roll it back for a second. When the words came out of the urologist's mouth, advanced metastatic prostate cancer, I didn't hear it audibly, but God was clear as a bell. And he said, I've got this. I've got this. And that's been my mantra and our mantra, and I'll explain the hour in a minute. That's been my mantra ever since. I had some wonderful guidance along the way. My dear, dear friend and spiritual mentor, Barbara Denton, said, you got to get on CareBridge, John, because you're not going to want to tell the same story to everybody who asks. You want to say it one time and direct them so they can get as much or as little of the information as possible. Barbara, I can't thank you enough for that. It helped me to articulate some things that I probably wouldn't have said, and people had a chance to ask some good questions, pray a lot, which I was grateful for. And so that was November the 15th of 22. Fast forward, one of the members of my team, and I have a team of, what did I count? I think it's over 20 people who I've surrounded myself with I'm the decision maker, but they are the people who have input, who have opportunities to pray and to encourage and guide and direct and advise. And so one of them said, hey, did you have any body work done? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about body work. And he said, what I mean is massage therapy for your swollen leg. And so he was the same one who earlier said, there's a clinic in North Charleston I mentioned to you. Have you contacted them yet? And I hadn't, because I was still reeling from the diagnosis and what have you. So, interestingly enough, I was with the urologist on Monday. That Thursday was the annual prayer breakfast. And Barbara and Dawn know about this because they've been to many of them. And a friend there that I serve on that council at Roper St. Francis was there, and I explained to him what I had just heard and the fact that I was going back to the urologist office later that morning, and I had some people going with me. Try to keep all of that straight, because that guy said, I'll see you Saturday at the Starbucks in Somerville, and a friend and I, Buddy and I, are going to talk to you because we've been there and we're doing that. So that's important for later on. Anyway, Gary got me to call, my friend Gary got me to call this place in North Charleston. It's a clinic. It's called the Center for Occupational and Environmental Medicine. Suffice it to say, it's an alternative medicine clinic. It was started in 1979. It still goes today. The founder is 89 years old. He no longer sees patients actively, Dr. Lieberman, but he reviews case files and guides the doctors who do see patients and helps them with the wealth of knowledge and understanding that he has to support people who are on a healing journey with cancer and some other conditions as well. So, 3 days, Monday before Thanksgiving in November of 22, I go to this clinic and I meet with Dr. William Weirs for the very first time. He's younger than I am. Most people are these days. And he explains to me that, now I'm going to tell you a lot of things, but I want to tell you this first. He said, what I have found to be the most effective of everything we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, the most effective thing, bar none, is belief. He wasn't even talking about the Lord. He was simply talking about the power of belief. And so he used an example of an aunt of his who believed so strongly in the healing power of chemotherapy that she couldn't wait to get it started. And when she was done, she was good to go. She is still considered to be in remission, and it's been, I think, probably going on 7 years now, right? Because back then he was telling me it was about 5. So I met Dr. Weirs, and he told me, he said, we're going to give you a few things that we'd like you to take. There's going to be several of them, and John, you've got a choice here, because these supplements, we're not sure, and you're not sure if they're new to you, how you're going to react to them. So you've got a couple of choices. You can take one at a time, give it a few days, and see if it doesn't have any adverse impact, and then add the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You also can go guns blazing. And I looked at the end of that statement, and I said, hey, Doc, guns blazing. And so that's what we did. When I left with the bag, and I'm telling you, it was a bag of supplements that they have available at the clinic, I drove away from there the next day, yeah. No, 2 days later, and I had enough things in small pill bottles that if I had gotten pulled, they probably would have wanted to analyze, thinking I was a freelance pharmaceutical representative. But of course I wasn't. All of that was all legit. So, all of this, and then he said one of the things we recommend for somebody on a healing journey with cancer support is a high dose of vitamin C. Now, so this is vitamin C as I picture it, in a same sort of a setting as you would get chemotherapy, right? It's not a port, they poke and then they just pour heavy doses of vitamin C right into your bloodstream, and the effect is that any blood cell that's not pulling its weight gets removed in the urine that comes as a result of the vitamin C being introduced and pushed through. We started with 25 grams. We raised it up eventually to 100 grams, and we were on that for many, many months, and then have gone back to a maintenance dosage now of 75 grams. A friend of mine and I were talking about it, and we did a little bit of math, and we wanted to find out how many oranges it would take to get I think it was 100, maybe it was 75. Anyway, it was 1,400 oranges in a day to equate what you would get, concentrated in your arm and through your body. So the oranges were an impractical alternative. That said, I went to my daughter's for Thanksgiving with all of these pills, but I was delayed by a day because I had agreed to sit, and that was now the day before Thanksgiving was the soonest they could get me in to do the vitamin C infusion. And Barbara, I know you're familiar with this story, and some of the other people from Wednesday Wisdom know this story. Thanks, Danny. I had an extra afternoon that I hadn't planned on still being home. And am I thankful to God that I did? Because I got a text message from our dear friend Kate Busher. Kate Busher's husband, Dan, and Kate together had been going through a healing journey of their own that often doesn't end well, which is ALS. And so Dan, with ALS, was, and Kate was telling me and texting me and said, hey, please keep Dan in your prayers. Father Mark just left, and she didn't have to tell me what that meant. That meant, anointing of the sick, or as we also sometimes refer to it, last rites. And that's exactly what happened. I had the afternoon free. I wasn't going anywhere because I had vitamin C the next morning, and so I called a friend whom I knew to be not busy that afternoon, and I said, hey, here's the situation. He said, I'm in. And so I'm driving back across the bridge. After I called Kate to find out what was going on, I called him next, and I said, hey, we're going out to the house. We're going to pray outside the house. This is a sensitive moment, but we're just going to go pray outside the house, maybe a rosary or whatever. And he said, okay, I'm in. Now, I must have been so deep in thought that I missed the turn to his neighborhood. That's important because by the time I got myself turned around to the house and back out and back on the road, I added 5 minutes to the trip. That's important because by the time we got to Dan's neighborhood, we saw somebody running the streets and praying a rosary by the name of Bill Desjack. I don't know if you know Bill, but Bill is so big on the rosary that he prays it while he runs. He also teaches on the rosary and instructs people, the faithful of all ages. And so we honk the horn and say hello, but I stopped and I said, hey, Bill, we're going to go, we're going to go pray in front of Dan's house. And he said, oh yeah, I got that text too. I'm in. So he's in his running stuff, right? And we just kidnapped him basically. And we got over to the house, and he said, so what'd you have in mind? And I said, I guess I thought we would pray the rosary. He said, let me just let Kate know that we're here. And he did, and Kate said, you people get in here. And so there was a crowd of people in Dan's bedroom, and all of their 3 sons had gathered. Dan's parents were there. Kate's mom, who lives with them, was in the room. as well as the nurse that would come and see him, the hospice nurse that would come and see him in the house. I know I'm going into great detail on this, but it's important because we prayed a rosary of the luminous mysteries, and Bill led us in it. We left. I dropped Bill back off on his running route before the police would come for me. We went back to Don's house after stopping at Costco to pick up some dinner. We had dinner, and in the middle of dinner, I got a text from Kate that said, Dan is glorious with the Lord. And so, because of the gift that I've been given, I was also given a gift of being able to say goodbye, which we all did that day. That wouldn't have happened otherwise. I'd have been in North Carolina and heard about it later. So, I tear up because Dan was also part of our little group that meets on Wednesday and shared with us in the early days when he really didn't feel comfortable in talking about what he'd been diagnosed with at all. So, let's fast forward. We go into December and January. I'm now doing the regular things, and I am turning it. I'm doing anything and everything that does no harm. My now wife is, we call her the research director. She's on the team, and she does and reads a lot of these things that you see here and a lot more in other books and online. She has been instrumental in the healing journey from a lot of perspectives. But I want to tell you one more of the miracles. Thanks, Danny. And then I'm going to give you the list of miracles before we go to question and answer. So happens that December was also the expected arrival date, December 20th, for my fourth grandchild in Atlanta. And so this was my younger daughter's second. We knew it was a girl, but they were holding off on sharing the name until she would arrive. I drove in. She'd been dilated, and they called her into the hospital. They said, don't wait. This child may be coming ahead of time, just like her older brother did. And so she said, Dad, don't bother coming. It looks like it's going to be a while. We'll talk in the morning. And so I didn't. And I knew there was, the baby was going to come sooner or later, so I got some gifts appropriately in the mall where I had stopped to park. And right next door to the mall was the hotel. And rather than stay at my daughter's house, I just was going to get a hotel room and do that. And I did. And any guesses what hotel room number they put me in? 1409. 1409. So in case I hadn't remembered the miracle, because the other thing that was going on, started in December, is that I was what they call castration sensitive, and the PSA that topped out at 1409 was dropping precipitously. All the way down to where this past summer, for 3 consecutive readings over probably 10 or 12 weeks, 0.3.
Wow.
Without the first traditional surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. By the way, and people ask, did you get surgery? Did you do radiation? I wasn't a candidate. It was too far. I was too far gone. The body was too far gone for either one of those. Chemotherapy was it. And so the oncologist stayed true to his word, and he didn't do a thing until January. I did everything I could think of until January, right? And through January, and the numbers were coming down big enough, and I said, Doc, the numbers are really doing well. And he said, yes, they are. and I said, why don't we just keep doing what we're doing for a little while? I don't feel good about tying both of my immune hands behind my back when I'm in the fight of my life, health-wise. And he said, so you don't want to do this? And I said, let's just hold off on a little bit. I'm not going to say a definite no forever. And so I was able to say that in January. I was able to get away with it again in February. And it became a broken record, so much so that I think by March he sent his assistant in, right? Like, she didn't know what was going on, and she started talking about the chemotherapy. And I said, oh, you maybe haven't talked to Dr. Ellison. We're probably going to hold off on that. Things are going in the right direction. What have you. So because I was where I was, back in December now, the next morning I get up in Atlanta, and I'm the first grandparent in the hotel room to say welcome to my new granddaughter, who was born within minutes of my daughter saying, don't bother, it looks like it's going to be a while. She said, Dad, it wasn't 2 minutes. And the doctors and the nurses all came in at one time and they said, you ready to have this baby? And so the baby arrived actually the same day I did, but I had already been dismissed for the day. So I got my hotel room, which I might not have gotten if I had gone to the hospital. But they had time with their, Tori had time with her mom and dad. The next morning, if that baby wasn't doing something that the nurses needed or mom and dad needed, that baby was in my arms. And you know what? It wasn't very Christian of me, but I wasn't in the mood for sharing. So I held that baby, and for as often as I could, for as long as I stayed. Miracles, miracles, miracles. So let me very quickly, this is a story of miracles. And rather than try to remember what those are, I've got them listed, and I want to just rattle them off to you. I believe that there have been approximately 17 miracles. The hotel room was one of them, and that was miracle number 4. And so on Caring Bridge, I called it, I had a running score of that. I called it Miracles 4, Cancer Nothing. And so forgive me as you can see I was ready for an all-day seminar here. And you're very fortunate that you didn't get this. There was a Miracle 5 somewhere. I considered what happened to be a double miracle with the hospital, because she's a miracle in and of herself. Would you agree? That's one of God's ongoing miracles. Miracle 6 was the reduction in swelling following the first real lymphatic drainage massage therapy on January the 4th. I found somebody in Mount Pleasant who gave me lymphatic massage therapy, and the next day my leg and foot weren't swollen any longer. Now, she said, I'm going to need to see you a couple more times, and this is something that might happen periodically over time. I said, okay, good to know. Miracle 7 was the PSA count on February the 7th of 1.8. Miracle 8 was the March 2nd PSA score for the first time under 1 of 0.9. Miracle 9 was the March 23 number of 0.5. Miracle 10, 0.4. Miracles 11 through 13 were the 0.3, the 0.3, right? And we had come from 1,409 less than 8 months earlier. No chemotherapy, no surgery, no radiation. Miracle 14. Laura and I, by the way, Tori was born on the 14th. I met her on the 15th after she had had her first overnight outside of mom. And 4 days later, my dear Laura said yes. And 24 days after that said, I do. And so it's been a very busy time. Miracle 14, Laura and I closed on our new home on May 4th. And started the process of moving from 3, not 1 or 2, but 3 fully furnished spaces down to 1. That's a lot of stuff. It's really a lot of stuff, but God's been good. It's been said that moving is one of life's most stress-filled experiences, and yet the PSA numbers remained low through the summer while we were swimming in boxes and bins of stuff. We found our new home actually through another series of articles that isn't so relevant to our time here together. Miracle 15 is very new news. It happened on Tuesday. I got the follow-up full body bone scan and the CT chest, abdomen, pelvis follow-up that I've been hoping to get for a while. Both doctors, the alternative medicine doctor, Dr. Weirs, and the oncologist, Dr. Ellison, agreed that that would be a good idea with enough interval in between. Listen to this. We went from, in November of 22, quote, innumerable lesions. I'm taking that to mean there's too many there to count. They probably overlap. We don't know where one ends and the next one begins. 2, this past Tuesday, prostate gland normal size. And from November of 22, extensive normal uptake, compatible extensive bony metastatic disease, including involvement of the calvarium, sternum, cervical, thoracic, lumbar spine, all the way down my spine. All of it involved. Bilateral pelvis, both sides, and proximal femurs, left a little more than the right, which is consistent with there's still a little bit left in the left side, nothing that they talked about in the right, and possibly involving the bilateral shoulder regions. So really, pretty much everything from the head down to the knees, as I mentioned. 2, this past Tuesday, significant interval improvement in comparison to prior 2022 comparison bone. A small subset of radiotracer avid lesions persist on this exam, most conspicuously involving the bilateral ribs, L5 vertebral body, and left ilium, left pelvic bone. That was Miracle 15. Miracle 16, my presentation here was originally scheduled for last month. So I wouldn't have had the miracle that I just shared with you to report on. But now I do. It was due to my schedule, and Frank graciously made the adjustment, and it allowed me to share this wonderful news of the latest body and CT scans, which God gets the glory, and we give him even greater glory for the news of even more healing. The next miracle, stay tuned. I am happy to take a question or two, Frank, to the time we have.
Well, just one question, and for me, and that is the prayer blanket and how that represents the prayers of so very many of your friends and acquaintances and their friends and their friends. How did that affect you in your spirit?
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I didn't understand the concept of prayer blankets until my friend Danny McKay shared with me that, hey, there's something that you do for people, and it was done for his late wife, Shirley, that their friends brought to them and said, here's something that is done. It's called a prayer blanket or a prayer quilt, and I'll hold it up to show you. This is a blanket that has, you'll see the strings that are tied to it. Each one of those represents someone who is praying for me in this healing journey. Is that right, Barbara? Okay. There is scripture at the top sewn into the healing blanket. and it's from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Somebody could probably rattle it off. I'll read it. They that hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar as with eagle's wings. They will run and not grow weary. Walk and not feel faint. That's my prayer blanket. That's proof, in addition to the remarks that came on Caring Bridge. And that wasn't enough, because when Barbara started this, she also bought a little book and had people sign it. And ostensibly, I'm guessing they are some of the same people who tied knots with string on the blanket. There might be some people who didn't necessarily do that, but I've got a book full of people who are praying for me actively. And so when I say my healing journey, it's to the glory of God. I will give you full balance on the story. Since those 3 consecutive 0.3s, that PSA number has started to tick back up. And as of yesterday, when I saw the oncologist again, after he was able to see and review the scan reports, the PSA level yesterday was 3 point something, right? And so we're not out of the woods yet. So I thank you for your continued prayers, especially my dear and close friends. I know there are people who are praying for me that I've never met. And I can't be more grateful and humble with the idea that there are people in other places in the world. But I did count up. And when I tell you that we did everything that we could think of under the sun that wouldn't do harm, I did count it up, and it's the second half of that tome that you saw me sifting through. I counted 40 different things. 40 different things. Some of them involved groups of people, like my team that surrounded me that I mentioned to you, all the people that were praying and have been and continue to pray for me. Not all of the, I didn't single out all of the supplements, but there are a couple of them that are noteworthy because they're being used in ways that was not originally intended for them to be used, but they have these other qualities to them. And then finally, prayers, prayers, prayers. Time before the Blessed Sacrament. I heard it over here. The prayer quilt itself, water from Lourdes. Somebody made sure I had some water from Lourdes and gave me more when that went away. Did you know that there's a Healing Springs in South Carolina? No. They call it Healing Springs. It's in a little town called Blackville, which is pretty close to Orangeburg. It's very nondescript, and they tell me that the Baptist church in Blackville, you go out around the back of the Baptist church, and there are 2 spigots, pretty unsuspecting. You might think you could just hook a hose to them. That's not what you do. What you do instead is you bring your jugs and you get water from Healing Springs. The story is told that in the Revolutionary War, there were 4 wounded soldiers. The general who had just finished a battle left these 4 wounded soldiers very close to Blackville, and 2 other soldiers with them. Any idea why the other 2 soldiers were there? To bury them when they died. The native Indians, the Native Americans who were native to that area, somehow got those soldiers to this Healing Springs. And 6 months later, all 6 of those British soldiers reported back to that general who had since moved to Charleston. That's in the Revolutionary, that's the 1700s, right? If I have my history straight. In 1944, after the land had changed hands a few times, the owner in 1944 deeded the property to God. I can't make this up. And it is open to the public, who often will bring their jugs and fill them and take them home, give them to other people, and guess what? A friend who did that gave it to another friend who lives on the Isle of Palms, but stopped and made sure that I got that gallon that was sent just for me. I drank that gallon of water, and for those 2, 3, 4 days that it took me to drink that gallon with other water that I was drinking, I told you about the bathroom issues and trips that guys my age have. I slept through the night. That hadn't happened before, and it's only happened occasionally since. Do you believe in coincidence? Not I. I think a coincidence is a miracle in which God chooses to remain anonymous. And that's, Frank, a long answer to your story about the prayer club.
Beautiful.
Would you like another miracle?
Absolutely.
Today is the first day of the novena to Our Lady of Lourdes, because her feast day is February 11th.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paula. Yes.
I remember hearing about Dr. Lieberman a while back. Unfortunately, it was around the time he was retiring. What is the name of that clinic?
It is called the Center for Occupational and Environmental Medicine. Online, it's known as COEM.org. They do much more than support for cancer. They are an allergy testing clinic. They do an enormous amount of work in areas that, and they're very big on naturopathic and natural healing and health support. I can't recommend them highly enough. They are wonderful people. While he's no longer in the clinic, his son is now in charge of the clinic, and the doctors get to focus on being doctors rather than
Oh,
administrators.
there is a Dr. Lieberman there, his son?
He's not a doctor,
Oh,
but he is indeed keeping it in the family and
and your doctor was Dr. Weir?
Weirs,
W-
W-E-I-R-S.
Yeah, that's what I-
If you need contact information, let me know. Be happy to give it to you. I know it by heart.
And I know that it's great because I go there. Dr. Word is my doctor as
Oh,
well.
fantastic, fantastic.
John, I want to thank you so much for your time and your story, your witness. This is really just all praise and glory to God, as you've said. So thank you so much. Thank you.